No, I was not watching Vesper Noir's membership stream at the end. I was definitely not. I was not definitely holding back because I wanted to watch Vesper Noir's stream. Definitely not me. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Besides, I need to get back into more higher energy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another stream. My name, of course, is Hexblade, your head guildmaster and chief barista. And it's another Finding Out Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. You made it to another week. And, of course, the reward for that is knowledge. Not a Ferrari, but it's knowledge. Just, me in the studio. This bookcase is behind me, and my Ferrari. We got a lot of videos today. Let's go. Forbidden knowledge, I think out of all these videos, the fourth video is definitely forbidden knowledge. And then we have some stuff about screwdrivers. So I can only promise one bit of forbidden knowledge today. Maybe two if we get to the second one, but we'll get to the second one probably next week if we don't have enough time. It's okay, don't worry. Gotta start. What were the topics that I keep doing this. I keep retweeting it and not remembering what I made as the tweet. So what do we have today for the docket? We have fans, printer, dangerous electric pianos, and dumb Nintendo patents. All of which sound fantastic. So let's just get started. So this one first happened a little bit earlier because this happened at CES. This is from PC World. And there's I think it's a solid state fan? Which would be kind of radical, actually. Let's, before we start, I'm going to do a sound check here.
World here, I'm with Doc.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, let's go.
Hey, Internet, Gordon, I'm with PC World here. I'm with Dr. Seshu Matt Heffapetty.
That's right.
Of the company, this is the hard part for me.
It's a good name.
He's going to correct me if I'm wrong. Froor. I just can't do it. The dry CES environment has got to my throat.
It's Froor Systems.
Froor Systems. And I will say at CES, among the thousands of vendors, this might be one of the coolest things I've seen here, and that is Airjet.
I can't pronounce it.
We actually wrote about this on PC World. You can go read a story written by my coworker, Mark Hochman, in words, but it's better to hear it from the horse's mouth, and he was instrumental in creating it. We're going to talk about Airjet. What is this for the viewer from the internet? What does this do exactly?
Well, we are a Silicon Valley startup that's 4 years old, and we set out to create the world's first solid-state active cooling chip. So when you look at thermal in any compute device, typically active cooling is done using fans. If you have a fan, you got active cooling, or if you don't have a fan, then you're limited to passive cooling, which is actually a much lower thermal level. And the type of thermal cooling you have in a device essentially dictates the performance you're going to get on the device. Your processor could be very high caliber,
right.
But if your thermal design is not good, then you would only get 50%, in some cases even only 25% of the total performance that the processor is actually capable of.
Not looking at you,
this has
Apple.
been a big problem in computing for many years now.
I'm on to you.
And so we asked the question, why do you have to depend on 100-year-old fan technology to cool these 21st century devices?
Okay.
Why can't we create a chip? So it's taken us 4 years, but now we've got this ready. This is the Airjet.
Airjet Mini, right? This is the Mini.
This is the Mini. And this is the world's first solid-state active cooling chip.
You know, when people hear solid state, they're like, well, what is in there? So this basically replaces a fan.
That's right.
And you're sucking the air, you're moving air somehow. What is the magic that you make this chip out of?
Well, this chip is 2.8 millimeters in thickness, but there's a lot of complexity that goes inside this chip. There's actually a cavity inside the chip in which we got vibrating membranes.
Okay.
These are MEMS membranes. And as they vibrate, they create this huge suction force, what we call back pressure, that pulls air through the holes at the top of the chip.
Okay.
And then that air is pushed down and it hits the copper heat spreader at very high velocities, up to 200 kilometers per hour of pulsating jets, we call them. And that is an excellent way of extracting heat
Yo,
because you're able to break through the so-called boundary layer. And so you're able to extract heat from this hot copper surface with high efficiency, and then the hot air exits sideways
That's the exhaust.
on the, at the exhaust of the chip.
What's the
boundary layer you're talking about, that is what it's like, this visible barrier. Right?
Well, it's actually, it's almost like a blanket of air molecules that are close to the hot surface. What they do is they prevent flowing air.
This
from
is
being
too
able to
galaxy
pick up
brain for me.
heat efficiently. So let's say you're using a blower or a fan.
Okay.
And as the air goes to the fin stack,
I'm
it
trying to
picks up heat,
fable out how this
but
works.
it doesn't get saturated with heat, because as the air is passing through the fin stack in a fan case, it's able to pick up maybe 25 to 30% of its total heat capacity. But if you want to make it 100% saturated with heat, then you got to break through the boundary layer, and the pulsating jets that we create inside this chip allow us to do that.
And that's because you just have that velocity. 200, I'm an American, so I'm not sure what 200 kilometers.
That's a lot of air.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's like 120 miles.
That's a lot.
That's pretty good.
And it's hitting vertically. You know, it's got to be very high frequency,
120?
high velocity, and it also has to hit vertically on the hot surface
Okay.
to break
Right.
through the boundary layer. And it's a technique in thermal heat transfer called jet impingement.
Okay. So
Okay.
I think visually though, what's kind of cool is so this.
Okay, I think I understand what he was talking about with the heat thing. Do you want me to explain? Okay, so basically, all right. Let's go back. Let's talk about the membranes. Let's talk about the membranes first. So you know how? Okay, you guys know how like speakers work, right? In like a very basic sense, is an electric current goes through a magnet, and the frequency of which that current pulsates dictates how the membrane moves in and out and in and out, and doing that at a certain frequency makes noise happen. And you know, like if you do that with like a subwoofer, it like pushes air and you feel that pressure on it. You know that? So imagine that, like a subwoofer pumping out like a very low tone and pushing air towards you, basically. And that's kind of how this chip works. And what he's talking about, the heat dissipation thing, is that when you have, let's say, a air cooler or something where it's like like a bunch of like, you know, metal fins and a fan blowing through the fins, what he's saying is that when the fins get saturated with heat, it basically makes a barrier of hot air that the air can take away. And obviously it's not really that effective because it's still heating up some of the air, so it's still kind of like warm. That barrier layer, you're saying, there's enough pressure that has the cold air contact the hot metal surface without getting protected by the hot air that is generated when the copper surface conducts heat. So it's okay. The only thing I'm curious about is how much energy this requires to use. If this is less than a traditional fan, I will expect Apple to buy this company immediately. 1 watt? That's like that's either on par or better than current fans, right? Because it's like, let's imagine 3 volts at like a 1/6 of an amp is like 1.8 watts. So like close. It doesn't look like, I mean, in the little slides here, it doesn't look like power power usage is part of the equation here, but we'll see what the talk
Airjet
is.
Mini actually has the same back pressure.
How are
which
we
is that
only at this
pressure
in
that you're blowing
3
down
minutes?
as this,
God.
right? This,
That's correct. One of the huge selling points of our chip is the high back pressure. And this has 1750 pascals of back pressure that it creates, which if you were to use a fan, you'd need something like this to generate the same amount of back pressure. Now, back pressure is important because when you put a fan or an airjet inside a super thin device, you got a very constrained channel through which you need to move the air.
Right.
And as you make the channel more and more constrained, there's more resistance to the airflow. And to overcome that resistance, you need a lot of back pressure. So very often, if you use, let's say, a typical blower that goes into notebooks, something like this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
this
MacBook
only has
blower.
about 195 pascals of back pressure compared to 1750. So it's like a tenth of what we got.
Right.
And what happens is, even though this can generate a lot of flow outside, when you actually put it inside a notebook, the amount of flow it generates drops like a rock.
Because it's constrained by
In our
the
case,
components.
you will see no difference in the airflow, even when it's inside a notebook. Moreover, with 1750 pascals of back pressure, we can actually make the notebook dust-proof. So you can actually cover the vents with dust-proof IP68 air filter material, and that doesn't prevent us from being able to generate an airflow.
And why can't I do that with just a normal fan that we're seeing here?
Because it has very low back pressure, and the amount of suction force it has cannot overcome the resistance that's created by the dust guard.
So basically, this is really, really powerful. I mean, we have a video here. You can see this thing actually blowing a ball around. So it's kind of amazing. And all it is the membranes vibrating. And
that's correct. And we use semiconductor technology and manufacturing techniques to manufacture this chip. So
Well, I mean,
as
you'd
a
have
result,
to at that
we are
size,
going
right?
to, we're putting thermal for the first time on the innovation curve that you're familiar with in semiconductors. So you will be able to see more powerful chips coming from us in subsequent generations.
Okay, so this is just first generation.
Cyborg airborne.
And so it could get more powerful then, or it will get more powerful. So okay, I think that's pretty cool because right now the application to me seems like for ultrabooks, this is kind of cool because you can dust-proof it.
This is
It's silent operation.
That's the thing that gets me because I review a lot of really thin laptops. They are getting very powerful, and they have to they can't increase the size of them, so they put more fans in them, or they crank the fan speeds up.
That's right.
That's
Either you go
nuts,
without
though.
fans, in which case you have low performance.
Right.
Or you put fans in and it gets really noisy, and it allows dust to go in as well. So with this, you can make it silent and dust resistant, and at the same time deliver much higher performance than you can using fans.
Okay.
So we've got several instances where we are able to show that in an ultra-thin notebook, you usually have like a 10-watt thermal limit if it did not have a fan.
Right.
Putting in a fan would bring it up to 15 watts, but very noisy. Putting airjet, you can actually move it to 20 watts CPU power while operating in silence and in a dust-proof manner.
No.
That sounds really good, Mike. The other question though is like,
No way.
it takes power to run a fan, of course. But
How is this only half the video? What is the other half?
Power budget. Is it gonna?
This,
Here we go.
This takes a 1 watt of power to operate.
Okay.
Maximum of 1 watt. It can also operate at lower power levels.
Okay.
And it can remove 5 watts of heat, each chip. And we also got a pro version, which is
calm
twice as
down.
powerful. So this can
Pro
remove 10 watts
version.
of heat.
Okay.
So our philosophy is that with this chip, you are essentially moving
Wait a minute.
thermal into a scalable solution, much like memory in a computer. So if you want to have 8 GB, you might have 1 DRAM chip. If you want 16, you add another. Go to 32, you add a couple of more. So likewise, depending on how much of thermal performance you want in your notebook, you can add multiple of these chips. So it's plug and play. So our vision is, look at notebooks today. If you want a gaming notebook, for example, you got to lug around a very heavy, thick notebook.
Yes.
Why can't a gaming notebook be just as thin as a MacBook Air? Well, our vision is to
4090 Ti notebook.
powerful chips
Don't they have 4090 Ti notebooks?
that will make that possible.
Okay, right now though we're gonna probably see it. I mean, it sounds like the application.
I'm pretty
right
sure
now
they
is more
do, and
right?
they look horrifying.
Books and phones, or
Ultra thin notebooks, we can match up to 28 watts of CPU power.
28?
It's actually the TDP for most Intel chips. So we can design ultra thin notebooks that can go up to
Oh
28
my
watts
God.
and not limited to the 10 watts that they're currently at. And do it silently.
to me, that's the thing is, gaming laptops have gotten really powerful and actually really thin, and also extremely loud. So I kind of look forward to this. Do you have to just basically? Are you going to have to use larger versions of this? Is that in the future, or could we do this with the existing large and small?
Imagine this in like a server setup.
Because you need to be in
Oh
the
man,
order
it could
of
be
28
like
watts
super
to
quiet.
100 watts of heat removal. So we will look to being able to address that in a future generation of products as we make these chips more powerful.
My brain just exploded. Guys, hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out. Solid state servers. Solid state server racks. No moving parts. Ah. Ah. That's good.
Okay.
But that's our vision. That ultimately there should be
Listen, to someone who doesn't like downtime, that sounds like an amazing solution.
and the weight and the noise that a compute platform generates when it's using.
How do I fall asleep in the server? No room to the pink noise. How could
So
I
have a
ever
question.
trust what the
So
silent
the
voice
demo
is
you
up
have
to?
on a laptop showing the AirJet modified to.
Well,
keep the
Rose,
CPU
if you
pretty-
have hearing like I
noticed
do,
the
you
way
can
it was
fall
done
asleep to
was
the electronic
instead of being
coil whine
on
that
the
those
CPU
servers bring
itself,
out. Don't worry.
It was actually attached to.
They're still using enough power to make
the advantage?
noise.
You connect it to a
worryingly.
heat pipe instead of just going right on the CPU die.
Well, you can if you go right on the CPU die, you're increasing the Z height, and when you want to make the laptop really thin, our customers prefer to keep our AirJet chips beside the processor and not on top of it. And when you
When
put
I
it
was
beside
working
the
at Dell, I actually
processor,
did
you still
that.
have,
I felt
have a
sleepy
means
too.
of conducting the heat
I mean,
from the processor to the chips.
it's a
And
it's a
we
fun
recommend that you
idea.
do that with a very
They should
thin
make them
vapor
force a
chamber.
Salfy home instead.
Do
That'd
you
be
think
deep.
that?
Are we now
it
into
would
the
be-
electric car
performance, if you
territory
were
of
CPU,
making
ultimate
fake
performance, you would just
exhaust
get quicker.
noises for everybody?
Direct attach is still better than having an intermediary, right?
Well, actually, vapor chambers are very efficient.
Oh.
So there is no loss in the temperature when you use a vapor chamber. It's a superconductor.
Yo,
It's a great little thing where basically you have
Vapor
two
chamber
pieces
still
of copper with
W.
some water vapor in between.
we're not getting those replaced anytime soon. It sounds like.
And so it works very well and allows you to make devices that are really thin.
Yeah, because then my other question is like, well, currently vapor chambers
Chambers.
and a lot of
Chambers.
laptops have seen very large ones sometimes. But couldn't you just at some point have the AirJet Maxi and you've got this? Couldn't you replace an entire vapor chamber with a gigantic AirJet, or that just doesn't make sense?
Can we?
Well,
I want one on a
usually the processor
graphics
dies are
card,
very small.
please.
Typically it would be smaller than a mini. So, and since we're using a very
Right.
thin layer of copper underneath, you want uniform spreading of heat in the copper. And in order to do that, it is still better to first connect a vapor chamber to the processor die and then place these multiple of these chips.
Vaporwave chambers. Let's
chamber so that you
go.
get a uniform distribution of heat
future is now.
across the entire bottom surface of these chips.
Well, and actually, another good question is like that I have is like, is the cooling potential only concentrated in one area on it, or is it the whole bottom side?
The whole bottom side. So what the vibrating membranes are doing are creating these pulsating jets that are hitting this copper heat spreader
And they're
inside.
shooting straight down?
Shooting straight down.
Okay.
All across the entire bottom surface. Inside. We actually can show you a cross section.
Ooh,
And when you
ooh,
see the
ooh,
cross
ooh,
section,
ooh.
you'll see how it's all operating.
Okay.
I want to see the cross section. Gimme,
Goes
gimme, gimme.
down and out, and
That's
then
right. Goes down and out.
I
But
want to
goes
see
down,
how this
has pulsating
thing
jets,
works.
Very high velocities, and using this technique of jet impingement.
I like my new noise canceling
we're able to
headphones. They
saturate
had
the
the
air with heat.
natively pumped
So it's
death
very
dynamic.
high efficiency heat transfer.
Oh, okay.
This technique is actually used in cooling the jet engines.
Oh,
Yeah,
Calm
aircrafts
down.
use that technique of jet impingement.
earlier you mentioned that fans are 100 years old.
More than 100 years.
More than 100 years old. Could we? I mean, looking to even more. I mean, this is way down the road, and I know people don't like to talk about future products, but graphics cards today, I don't know if you've seen them, have gotten as big as a loaf of bread practically. I'm wondering
Yeah,
if
that's
there's
one way
any
to say it.
advantage. Could the application down the road?
It's a huge
scale
ass
up
loaf
so
of bread,
you
by
can
the
actually
way.
pull a desktop card off more effectively?
We believe yes.
Okay.
We are just getting started. This
Right.
is first generation.
Sure.
We're a 4-year-old company with a very ambitious outlook.
We're gonna
So
get
we
purchased
keep,
by Apple.
executing steadily and getting better every year.
Okay. You know, and it's amazing. The technology is amazing. I see a lot of amazing technology demos. Really like, wow, you can see that.
I hope
this
they
is
get
great
purchased
stuff.
by Apple.
Is it going to work from
Or
a
at least
business
someone.
sense, though? Because a lot of people say, wow, that's.
This
really
is a
cool,
setup to
but
get
if it's gonna
to
cost
get
100,
acquisition by
100
somebody.
times more than a fan. Is it going to make business sense for this to make it?
Absolutely, it does. And we're working with several device manufacturers.
Drop the
Start
names.
seeing products in the market.
Come on, do it. Drop the names.
Later half of 2023 this year, and it makes perfect business sense.
Okay, so we'll actually see the first products end of 2023. I forgot it's 2023. We'll see it at the end of this year. Devices with this. I know you probably can't say what, but
Unfortunately, I cannot. I have to let my customers make the announcements on their own schedules. But yeah, we're working with several.
Me screaming at at the top of my lungs.
and I
Drop
do
the
wanna point this
names.
out
I
to the
need
internet,
to
'cause we have
know.
Gen 5 SSDs coming out, and if you look quickly at this, you would think it's an SSD, right? Because I just want to encourage you to I would love to see this on Gen 5 SSD because that's
Yeah. It's 2.8 millimeters thick.
yeah, because the
Looks like an
coolers we are
ancient
now
PC.
seeing
It looks
for
like a
SSDs aren't this tall.
PCMCIA card,
With,
doesn't
you know,
it?
passively
Surprising.
cooled.
You know, if you're using 19th century technology, that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of the those, have you guys seen the new PCI the NVMe PC coolers? They're insane. Watch. I'm not. There it is. Look at this. What is this? What is this? These look like they can mine Bitcoin. Why do you need this? This looks like it could mine Bitcoin. Doesn't it? This is insane. This is for a hard drive. I hate them. I hate them so. Like this. It's fine. This is normal, right? This, okay. Calm down. Actually, no. This is worse. This is a water cooling block. It's on a PCI bracket. Oh my god! You're putting it in your water cooling setup like it's a graphics card, bro. It stores the porn. That's it. Long time no see, Revelers. Hello. Welcome back. These are horrifying, dude. Look at this. I hate the future. If this is the future, I hate it. How do you put this on a board? These look ugly as hell. I hate them. This one looks like a graphics card. This one's straight up just a graphics card.
Thanks for.
Oh yeah, no, that's the end of the video. How much NVMe performance do you need anyway? I don't know. Anybody who's asking for maybe a couple gigabytes a second then is probably spending too much money. The capture cards, yeah, they honestly look like capture cards. They probably are cooler than capture cards though. Anyway, speaking of CES stuff, well, not really CES. This is Formnext, which is a 3D printing conference, and this is from one of my favorite channels who do printing. Stefan from CNC Kitchen.
Your old prints and recycles them into new filaments.
So they do
A
cool
variable
things,
size 3D
good
printer
things.
nozzle, a 3D printer that can be controlled in augmented reality, and peak prints with perfect layer adhesion are just some of the things I found at Formnext TCT 2022 in Frankfurt, Germany, which is one of the leading trade shows about additive manufacturing worldwide. Let's find out more. Guten Tag,
everybody.
I'm
I'm
Stefan,
Stefan.
and welcome to CNC Kitchen. This video is sponsored by Nord Threat Protection, the latest online security solution by the guys that also make NordVPN. Let me tell you a story
My
from more than 20
cousin
years
does 3D
back
print.
when I had
Yeah, funny enough, I'm actually doing a 3D print right now for a fish tank, and if I hear a pop and turn my head, something's gone wrong. So don't worry.
my first email account.
Thank you, Stefan, for also telling me where to skip ahead from the advertisement.
Me. Let's start with something really awesome, and this was the booth of the startup Recyclingfabrik, which is German for recycling factory, and they basically are the only company worldwide
it could be normal for
printing waste
recycling
and they'll turn
fabric.
it into new filament. With Recyclingfabrik, if you live in Germany, they will send you a free shipping label if you collected at least 2 kilograms of PLA and PETG, or 7 kilograms of material if you live in Europe. Once they receive your package, they'll sort the material by type, color, and potentially remove unwanted stuff. You'll be receiving reward points depending on the quality and quantity of material you
I wish I could
provided
read that.
you can use to purchase recycled filament from their shop. They have to process large quantities of material to be economical, so you won't be receiving filament from exactly what you send in, but it might be part of the amazing gradient colors that they make. I was highly impressed with what they are able to achieve, and they told me that the quality of their material is very comparable to one made from virgin material, and they only see a small degradation in mechanical properties. Next, I visited the
That's
Fraunhofer
recycling.
IIPT,
Very good.
which presented a very impressive new way
It's the same
to
linguistic
interact
group as
with a
speaking English.
3D
Yeah, I know.
printer.
Germanic
They
is part
developed a
of
mixed reality
the
demonstrator
form of
to
English.
control
Also,
and
look.
maintain your printer, which could make additive manufacturing, especially for the tech unsavvy people, more approachable. I never wore a Microsoft HoloLens before and was just blown away once the demo started. The mixed reality headset projected a set of virtual controls into
This
my
is
view
cool
that
as
allowed me
hell.
to browse through prints, take a look at them, and just drop them on the print bed to start. Everything was controlled via hand tracking and was super intuitive. Yet starting a print is usually not the hard part, so the feature that instead caught my attention was interactive maintenance.
This is
Their system guides you step by step through the process,
This part I love and is basically the future. Look at this.
highlighting where you need to work, which reduces the risk of misinterpreting the manual and just streamlines the process. Fraunhofer is
It's like
a
a
research
it's like a
organization active in a
tutorial
ton of
in your
different
face.
fields
It's an
to
in-game
develop the
tutorial in
technology of the
life.
future. And this was a great demonstration of how they imagine how users could work with and on machines tomorrow. If you have been following my channel for longer,
AR
you'll
for
know why
manuals
I
is
was
cool,
excited
honestly.
to see the booth of Mach 3D. They showed off a tabletop tensile and compression tester with the goal of getting material testing directly onto the shop floor and out of laboratories, because they say it will be easier to use and will only cost around 1/5 of the price that competitors charge. The tester that they showed is capable of 5 kilonewtons, which is around 500
You know they
kilograms,
invented
or
MP3
1100
compression?
pounds of force onto
What?
different samples, ranging from dog bone samples to even a
Wild
T-bone test.
wild
The base model
transition
only
from
measures strain
from
and
work.
displacement, but you can
Of
add
work.
external extensometers or strain gauges, and they're even currently validating an AI model to accurately predict strains from their displacement measurements. Maybe I can convince my wife that this would make an awesome birthday present. Next, I saw
AI.
some really innovative 3D printing technology at the booth of the Austrian company Plasmic. Their
Heyo,
item part
sword,
in Holland
hello.
features an inductive nozzle. They
In-
have a special hardened steel nozzle
inductive.
core and a copper coil around it. Custom electronics that interface with your mainboard control the high-frequency magnetic field.
What
which
are they
then
doing
induces any
measuring
currents in
metal
the nozzle
resilience?
core and heats it. This does
It's for it would be for material studies. Like if you're making a product and you're like, what would, like, I don't know. Let's make this plate out of like 1/4 inch thick steel. So how strong can that be? And then you test it, and then you know what it would be in the larger scale. A lot of it's like a lot of it's prototyping and material stuff like that. Because ornaments for to make a plastic weapon props. Yeah, like I've considered it. 3D printing right now is a lot of knickknacks, and if you know how to model, you can make some fun stuff. Like because obviously you can't 3D print everything. You can only 3D print shells of objects, so you'd have to get the electronics to put it inside. But still, it's enough for like making a project, which is cool. And also, plastic jigs. That's also helpful if you just like don't have some stuff. Right.
doesn't only result in impressive fast heating, which means 5 seconds to 200 degrees Celsius and 15 seconds to 400 degrees Celsius due to its low thermal mass, also letting you cool it down in an instant and allowing for very precise and responsive temperature control. The great thing here is that the heat is generated very close where it needs to melt the filament. So temperature
that gets hot super quick.
And melt rates are increased. The responsiveness of the hot
Like, for example, the 3D printer hot end that I have, it takes like maybe a good like minute to get to 200 Celsius. So 5 seconds is kind of insane.
hot end will also allow better gradient prints, because you could even vary extrusion temperature within one layer and create different densities with, for example, ColorFab's series of foaming filament, where the material density is adjusted by the print temperature. Plasmix successfully launched the Ino Trident as a Kickstarter last year, and I hope it becomes available for purchase and for me to test soon. But let's come from a hot-ended nozzle that you can put
I'm gonna look at that real quick. I just need to find it.
in your own machine to more industrial solutions, and start with Cubic's large volume printer that uses a variable nozzle diameter. Their machine, with a build volume of 1.7 meters by 1 meter by 1 meter, uses a nozzle diameter of 1.5 millimeters for the contours, and every 3 layers it prints the infill at a nozzle size of 3 millimeters. And they're not switching physical nozzles or even have separate print heads, but they developed a nozzle that can dynamically vary its orifice diameter. This way they're able to print detailed surfaces, yet don't waste a ton of time.
That's a safety hazard. We can't make out in a large volume 3D printer.
All of this runs with a pellet extruder, so they don't need expensive filament for their big parts. And it was really interesting to talk with them about a G-code post processor they developed that allows to very accurately adjust the flow.
Look how big that is.
Even use very clean retracts and not ooze a ton of material between the travel moves, which allows them to be one of the few companies not only showing vase mode prints on large volume printers. I couldn't find any detailed information on how they control the nozzle diameter, and unfortunately, or
I got PD because you use a PLA.
didn't find a patent that explained
Oh,
the
you're
mechanism.
silly.
Yet the next booth that I visited very clearly showed how they vary their nozzle diameter. This is Sculptman's ribbon nozzle. A nozzle that is not round, but rather a slot that can be dynamically controlled, improving print speeds but still allowing for small details, because it can basically merge individual circular extrusions into one wide one, but still can be small for details. Since the nozzle orifice is not symmetrical...
Well, Rose, what were you confused PETG with, though?
...the whole hot end assembly so that it aligns with the print direction. Doing the path planning for the orifice and rotation axis, of course, is not something that you find in a regular slicer. So they're working on their own software suite, and since they mainly showed off vase mode parts, software and probably also complex models with retractions might still be
That's pretty.
Another really clever and nice to look at way.
Oh, this one's horrifying. Look at this.
FDM printers was showcased at the booth of Victra. Their FX7 print head has several individual nozzles next to each other that can extrude
biblically accurate 3D printing.
When they are printing a circle, for example,
look at
the individual nozzles dynamically switch on and
why
off
do you
depending
need
on
this?
where they currently are at the part. They printed some parts with different colored filaments for each nozzle, which nicely illustrates the transition between the individual nozzles. The advantage of the system,
look at this. Why would you need this?
big nozzle, is that it allows them with clever path planning to still be able to reproduce fine details like with a single nozzle printer, but extrude
big news for the gays who print.
Very wide extrusions.
Yes, congratulations,
Type and size
gay
of the
people
part
who
you
can print.
You can choose between different nozzle plates with individual orifice sizes and spacing. They claim a 300% increase in productivity with their system. The toolhead only works because they developed a slicer that can do the complex planning for each of the 7 nozzles, which shows how important the connection of hardware and software is to achieve the most in a process. Appium, who built 3D printers for high-tech polymers like PEEK, demonstrated something very similar. These are layer adhesion samples, printed vertically out of PEEK. At Formnext, you could use a center punch at their booth and try to delaminate the layers. Yet they
polyether ether ketone. I know what that is.
Perfect layer adhesion, because instead of splitting the part, the center punch just squished the material. One of the ways they achieve these impressive properties is by using a ring heater around the nozzle, which heats up and even partially melts the existing print before a new layer is printed on top. Yet they don't simply run the heater all of the time, but use a clever algorithm that calculates how much a specific part of the print already got heated and tune the power of the lamp accordingly. This
They said
prevents
the
one
word.
of
They
the
said
model
the.
from
They
getting
said
too
the
hot,
A
while
word.
other regions remain
Algorithm.
too cold, and ensures very consistent temperatures of the upmost layer before the nozzle extrudes a new one. And with this system, they even don't need a fully heated chamber, which otherwise is
Ooh.
necessary for these demanding polymers. So this was
Pretty.
the first part of my
Wahaha,
coverage of
hello.
Formnext 2022. I hope you like this format because I really enjoy these events and I'm thinking about covering more of them in the future. Maybe you found some of these techniques interesting and even got inspired to implement some of these ideas into your designs. Let me know which of the booths I showed so far were most interesting for you, and if you even visited Formnext, let me know what I
Look at that
missed.
one. That's
Thanks for watching,
huge.
everyone. I hope you found this video interesting. If you want to support my work, head over to Patreon or become a YouTube member. Also, check out the other videos in my library. I hope to see you in the next one. Auf Wiedersehen and goodbye.
Chiffon does really cool stuff.
How users could
I love it. It was always so good. All right, let me see here. Ooh, this next one was posted by Brandon. Thank you, Brandon. This one is how the Italian Renaissance conceived the smartphone camera. That's a very interesting premise. How is this going to work?
Very special
Oh.
going. There was something very special going on in 16th century Italy. The Rinascimento, or rebirth, was a hard shift from the Middle Ages to a more modern era of humanity. The Black Plague caused major migrations throughout Europe. Technologies
Gasp.
like the
The
printing
plague.
press spread ideas faster than pretty much anything before it. And a rediscovery of ancient Roman texts led to a refocus on the humanities, philosophies based on logic and reason. But probably the most recognizable aspect of the Renaissance is the art. It's impossible to think about art itself without first considering some of the pieces
Art.
and sculptures that were crafted during that era. Giotto, Da Vinci,
Okay, that seriously keeps
Michelangelo,
like doing
and
that, and
Caravaggio.
it
The
keeps
list of
scaring me.
artists who fundamentally changed the
Oh, is
way
it-
art was
okay, it's
made
good.
during
It's fine.
that period goes on for pages and pages.
Art.
So much of that rapid elevation of quality of art is based on one fundamental concept: light. Before the Renaissance, so much of the art that was being produced was impressionistic. It was flat. You had line drawings with minimal depth. And that isn't to say that there wasn't light in these paintings. It just clearly wasn't a key focus. So many of these paintings had a global light, which gave an even exposure to the painting. But it wasn't until the Renaissance that these artists started to understand how light could really give form to a 2D image. Da Vinci's around 20 paintings helped define the concept of sfumato, removing those harsh lines that defined a figure on a canvas. Instead, Da Vinci used a soft transition between colors to give form to
Was that a ferret?
image. There's a softness to the texture that helps better define how our skin actually looks and curves. It's soft and it's plump, and its tonality moves gradually from
Probably
color
still.
to color.
There it is again.
Almost invisible gradient. Based
I don't know
completely
what
on
it
the
is, but
source
it's still
and the
funny.
direction of the light that's being shined on it. In a similar way, Caravaggio used revolutionarily accurate depictions of light and shadow to bring form to a 2D image. Maybe Caravaggio's most famous painting, The Calling of St. Matthew, directs your eye around the canvas using the light from a single window.
Oh, that's
The
a
light tells the
really
story
good.
itself, directing you to look at the most important characters on the painting. But maybe more importantly, it gives form to a 2D image, bouncing around the room and fading from light into complete darkness. It's this accurate depiction of light and shadow.
That's
chiaroscuro
really
that
pretty, yeah.
Caravaggio really pioneered. It adds a sense of realism that is both artistic and intentional. Caravaggio is painting the light just as much as he's painting the rest of the canvas. The importance around the control of the properties of light has remained an important part of the art world since the 15th century. It helped move 2D animation into a 3D space. And it helped create the art of photography, not just through the devices which capture light, but through the art of what to do with that light that's cast. Early photography was founded almost entirely in this Renaissance concept of chiaroscuro. Especially in black and white photography, the artist's control is placed almost completely in the tonal range of the photograph. This variation between light and dark is what adds.
That looks like that
dimension
baby's
to the
going to kill the
image.
man playing the,
Whether in a dark
the
room
guitar.
Or a more modern editing program, the artist's control is completely founded against the intensity of those highlights or the deepness of those shadows. In the early 1900s, maybe a more modern version of Caravaggio, Ansel Adams knew this better than probably anyone. I specifically remember his landscapes hung throughout my house when I was a kid. You could stare at them for hours and notice the minute shifts in tonality between the highlights and the shadows. They showed this beauty through shape.
Whoa.
They were monochromatic in color, but so rich and colorful in depth.
Pretty.
Now, Adams didn't paint each individual detail of a scene like the painters of the Renaissance, but his understanding over the importance of tone in a photograph added so much richness to his work. And even though Adams' medium of a camera gave him control over the depth of field of an image, he mostly shot at an aperture of f/64, this ratio between the focal length of the lens and the hole that actually allows
Oh, that's really
light
tiny.
that made all of his images almost entirely flat. Now, part of Adams' reason for doing this is to force your eye to dart around every single part of the image. You can see the beauty in the flowing river, the flowers blooming in the meadow, and the towering mountains looming over the rest of the canvas. To Adams, all of the nature was important. But without using depth of field, the tonal shifts between the highlights and the shadows were everything. He had to practice chiaroscuro just as much as the Renaissance painters before him hundreds of years in the past. And even though most of Adams' work was shot almost a century ago, so much of that work looks modern. Hell, it looks
I don't even know what to say. It's so
better than what
damn
most
pretty.
photographers could shoot today. And the reason for that, beyond his fundamental understanding for the characteristics of light, was that there was a large period of time after Adams' work where cameras just got
Shit.
fundamentally worse.
Yeah.
Now, Adams worked with large format photography, these huge wooden boxes that captured light and projected them onto these
want a visual novel with
massive
that.
4x5
Oh, that'd be a
and 8x10
sick
inch
aesthetic.
canvases of film. And even though these cameras look pretty dated by today's standards, the quality that this format can capture is pretty freaking incredible. That
that's
massive
pretty.
film canvas that lens projects onto inside of that box allows for the most minute shifts in tone and color. Large format just has this incredibly granular sfumato, or in the case of Ansel Adams, a much more granular chiaroscuro. This granular tonality in images that creates realism and depth. But one of the fundamental cornerstones of technology is miniaturization. How do we take a big thing and figure out how to make it smaller, make it do the same amount of work or maybe even more in a much smaller, more portable package? We've seen it in radios, music players, data storage, and computers. Computers shrunk from a mainframe to a desktop PC to a laptop to a smartphone, and hopefully one day to an ambient system that is existing all around us without us actually seeing it. So, of course, this was destined to happen to cameras too. Large format became medium format. Medium format became 35 millimeter and even half frame. And with that shrinkage, the film canvases that we were actually projecting these scenes onto also shrunk. Even if we were able to project the same scene onto the canvas, there's just less physical space to have that granular tonality between color to color or highlight to shadow. There's less chiaroscuro, there's less sfumato. The film is just way smaller.
Shrinky.
Then came digital photography and eventually mobile phones with cameras built in. But they were so small because just like with computers and dedicated cameras, mobile phones were also shrinking.
They were also
Hey, turns out
very
humans
terrible.
are pretty addicted to communication. And phones offered communication faster than almost any medium before them. So new ones got made every year. They got better every year and faster every year. The batteries.
Is that why shrinky things had such high quality? Because you had them on a big canvas or whatever and then chunked them down? I know, this is how I think about it.
got better, the screens got better, the chipsets got better. But unfortunately for cameras, we just can't change physics. That obsession with thinness and miniaturization stuck around, and it became really hard to fit any sort of sensor bigger than your pinky nail into your cell phone. Because in order to increase the sensor size in your phone, you'd have to increase the Z depth, the distance between the optical center of the lens and the sensor or the field plane. Think about those large format cameras again. They are huge. They have a ton of
What's the new
space
game system you
between
got?
the lens and the film canvas that you're projecting onto. If you take a magnifying glass,
If you got reminded by phone and word you got
that image circle
an
is
N-gauge.
bigger. The same needs to happen in your cell phone. Now, there were some phones that tried to get rid of this super thin device trend. The Nokia 808 PureView is a pretty good example. Pretty much half of the back of that phone was an image sensor. And that
camera
allowed for a couple of
bulge.
things.
N-gauge.
Either
Dang it,
you
I knew
could
it.
make the pixels bigger to allow for more light into your image sensor, or you could subdivide it even more to get a higher resolution photo with the same size photo sites. But those devices didn't really catch on, and they kept getting beat out by these phones that were just thinner and lighter. And maybe part of that reason is because the mobile internet didn't really exist like it does today, and social media wasn't a super integral part of our society at that point. Those phones were just too early. But computational speed was advancing a lot faster than physics was changing. So engineers decided they needed to try to cheat physics with chipsets. They needed to process the photos on these computers in your hand to make them look as good as they possibly could with the limitations they had. Now, most tiny sensors on your phone just can't capture a ton of light. So you've got to amplify that signal with something called electronic gain. You're digitally brightening those pixels.
Oh, here we go.
But pretty much all digital photos have noise. These imperfections caused by digital interference, electron hopping, a bunch of random different stuff. So by digitally amplifying the signal, you're also digitally amplifying the noise. If you can saturate those pixels with a lot of
There's
light,
one
and you
Adrian
don't have
Unice.
to digitally
Oh,
amplify
man.
the signal as much, you're gonna see less noise.
That's
But
too
these
much
tiny
for.
sensors
That's too
just
much,
can't
man.
capture that much light, so you really have to add a lot of gain. But then you got to try to minimize that noise, so you have to use noise reduction, which effectively works by taking an area in a photo and taking the average pixel color of that area and
Blurring.
applying it to all those pixels. But that fundamentally removes the sfumato from that image, that granular
Sfumato.
tonality, which gives it contour and depth. That's the reason that phone photos often really look plasticky and flat. And then after you've applied all of that noise reduction, your image starts to look soft. So then you have to add
Sharpening.
And sharpening fundamentally ups the contrast between the bright and dark parts of the image, which again fundamentally reduces the chiaroscuro between those parts of the image, and you've got an even flatter looking image. That's sort of how we've ended up with the phone photo look, and why you can usually tell the difference between a photo that was taken on a phone and one that
I
was
used to
taken
want to
on
be.
a big.
Yeah, I knew someone who also used to want to be a
Cameras
photographer.
Haven't really advanced that quickly. The technology has mostly stayed the same. Phones, on the other hand, they have the technology. This led to something called computational photography. And technically the processing that your phone is doing to make that small sensor photo.
Hell yeah, computational photography.
But there's things that your phone is doing that is cheating physics.
IMO, I
Normal
like it.
camera
Don't
just
look at me.
Cannot do right now. Google's Pixel phones can take some pretty great photos of the stars with astro mode, and they can basically see in the dark with night sight. They can separate the foreground from the background and sort of fake that big sensor look.
Hey,
with
it's Mr.
portrait
Mobile.
mode. But one of the cornerstone technologies of computational photography, and maybe one of the most important things that it's done for the photography world, is something called HDR+. HDR in photography stands for High Dynamic Range, which is effectively the process of getting as much detail as you can from the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows of that photo. Without HDR in a small sensor photo, when you bump the gain to get all that shadow detail back, it was really easy to blow out the
It looks
highlights
so
of
bad.
the photo. It was sort of either or. You were going to expose for the highlights or exposed for the shadows, but you weren't really doing both. But around 2016, Google's then head of computational imaging, Mark Lavoie, came up with a solution for this, which he called HDR+. And a few years ago, when I was at Android Authority, I actually made a whole video about this.
Technology.
So maybe I'll link that below if you want to check this out. But effectively, how it works is when you have your camera app open, your phone is technically taking a ton of really short exposures because it's got to be able to show you those images on your screen anyway. I mean, it's refreshing the display over and over again. So it just stores a lot of those super short exposures in RAM, and then it aligns those frames, takes the average pixel color of every pixel in the image, and then it's able to bump the gain without having quite as much noise because it's averaging each individual.
Yeah, it averaged out like
Just this feature
3
alone
pictures.
cemented Google as having one of the best phone cameras for a really long time, and it's only super recently that there's been some actual serious competition. Mobile phones were not used to capturing this much data and showing this much detail in the highlights and shadows. This was
Stealth
super
reminder,
life-changing
the
stuff.
Pixel 2 was
Now,
awesome.
the danger here is just because you're capturing all that information doesn't mean you should always show all of that information. Remember the sfumato and chiaroscuro again. It's that granular tonality between the highlights and the shadows from one color to the next color that adds contour and depth to an image. If everything is a midtone, you're gonna have a really flat looking image, which is just amplified by the processing that your phone's already doing. Now, fortunately, Mark Lavoie knew this very well. He's actually on record saying that he took a lot of inspiration from early Renaissance artists, especially from Caravaggio.
3DS was ahead of its time.
in tuning the
Okay, that's a
HDR
controversial take. What do you mean?
And in the early pixels, you can definitely see this. There's a lot of deepness in those shadows that meld really well into the highlights.
What do you mean the
I've
3DS
always
was
been a
ahead of
fan
its time?
Caravaggio. This is his Supper at Emmaus. Shadows are dark. There's a lot of depth.
Oh wow, this is straight up just from Google.
And that
Okay,
has been sort of
whoa.
the signature look of HDR+.
But as the years went on and other manufacturers started to do
It had 3 in it
computational
before
imaging,
Valve could.
there started to be this obsession with showing as much
Good one.
detail as possible. Because you could say, hey, we show more shadow detail than the competition, or hey, we retain more highlight detail than the competition. The stops of dynamic range that we show is bigger than the competition. And so
Because
there
you text
became this
similar before
trend
phones did.
where the shadows started getting brighter
Did it?
and the highlights
did?
started getting darker, and you got a flatter and flatter looking image. Here's a few photos that I took with Mark at the Pixel 4 launch event, and one that I took
doing a
at the
think.
Pixel 3 launch event. Now, I'll admit I kind of messed up here because that Pixel 3 reference photo was taken at the Pixel 3 event, and the lighting's totally different. But if you look at the Pixel 1, 2,
Let's ignore
4,
it.
you can see a much tighter focus on preserving the highlights and lifting the shadows in this almost linear fashion. The Pixel 1 had this great balance of shadow and highlight detail.
That's a really good
It was
camera
really
for the
overly
first
sharp,
Pixel.
Again, an artifact of needing to compensate for that noise reduction.
Oh, it's really good.
There was color in our skin. There was contour in our faces. And as the devices got newer, that intense focus on saving the shadow and highlight detail started to remove the contrast from our face. And we started to look more like zombies than humans.
Huh.
And here is the thing. Those algorithms that are processing the images in our phones, from trying to get around the small sensor issue to some of the computational features like portrait mode and even a little bit into HDR, are just stopgaps. There are these algorithms that were created in this particular moment in time when we were obsessed with thinness and portability of our devices. But even in just the last couple of years, that sentiment has changed completely. We've seen so many companies increasing the thickness of their smartphone and also of the camera bump, because the camera has pretty much become the fundamental key selling feature in most smartphones. We're just sharing way more than we used to. And when you have a way bigger camera bump, you can fit a way bigger sensor in there. Those bigger sensors just capture so much more information in a natural way, from gathering way more light to having way better dynamic range to having natural depth of field when you point your phone at an object. There's this really nice transition between the object you're pointing your phone at and the background. Portrait mode seems almost pointless at this point. And I'm not saying we should get rid of
Wasn't portrait mode basically just a stopgap for people who didn't have 2 cameras in their phone to not measure depth information? That's basically what portrait mode was, right? It was yeah, I remember. It was basically a stopgap for phones that didn't have 2 cameras to measure depth information. It just guessed.
of things like HDR+. Those computational features are incredible and can really lend themselves to newer, bigger sensors. But we should be utilizing the natural characteristics of the bigger sensors that we now have in our phones. Right now, new phones with much bigger sensors are still processing like their smaller, older ones. I mean, look at this photo that I took with the Pixel 5 on a 1/2.55 inch sensor versus
Okay.
this photo I took on the Pixel 6 with a much larger 1/1.3 inch sensor. Yes, the Pixel 6 does have more natural depth of field because of that larger sensor, but the processing, the look, is almost exactly the same. Let's look at a couple examples of what's possible on these new, bigger sensors. Here's a couple straight out of camera JPEGs that I took with the Pixel 6 versus the RAW file.
Give me
that I
them
captured
RAWs.
alongside it with the RAW plus JPEG mode. If we bump the vibrance to bring the color back into the photo, you're gonna see what's really possible.
Oh, that's so
at
much
this.
better.
Remember, the RAW is the untouched information the sensor is capturing. What you usually get when you hit that shutter button is the photo after that RAW has been processed by the phone. The pre-processed photo has super over-sharpened fine edges, which are compensating for that noise reduction. Every individual hair is way too sharp. The eyes start to break down when you zoom in, and the nice natural halation from the light is sucked away completely because of that HDR. But the edited RAW shows the natural gradient of focus that we're getting from these bigger sensors. The highlights and shadows in the face, especially under the eyes and some other parts of the cheeks, get sucked out in the straight out of camera image and get over HDR'd, which gets rid of the natural contour in the face. But the RAW version of this photo almost brings them back to life. It looks like it was shot on an actual full-on camera with a much bigger sensor, and it retains so much of those natural characteristics that makes a big sensor great. Here's another photo I took with the Pixel 6 in Wetzlar, right as the sun was setting. It looks fine at first glance, but look what's possible when we compare it to the RAW.
The same
shadow
with
in
how
the
it's going
ground
to
is
design
gracefully
receiver to use.
lifted in the
Yeah, it's kind of the
should be
same, I guess.
darker to help show what time of day it is. The highlight should be able to peak a little bit, and maybe the biggest giveaway from this photo.
Oh,
is the
that's
foliage.
so
Every time you
good.
take a phone photo with plants in them, they get over sharpened to hell. There's just too much detail in there. But the RAW has a much more natural look. You get this contrast between the darks and the lights and still preserve that detail. And probably most obviously in this shot, it's not over sharpened, and you can feel the softness of the foliage more naturally than the straight out of camera photo. The time of day shines through a lot better because there's color that's actually coming out of those shadows, and they're not just lifted to make the tree look dead. It's just an overall better looking photo, and it stays true to that contour that was pioneered by Da Vinci and Caravaggio. These RAW photos can really highlight what's possible with these new, bigger sensors. If I
Sure
can
way to
edit
find cheat
photos
cases
to look
again.
like this,
Make sure
the
they
phone
make
should
small
be able to
sensors
do
doing
it
it.
itself.
I don't think that's true. Hey, Brandon, are you still here? What was the new Samsung with the stupid large camera sensor in it? What was it again? Hold on. Samsung S22 sensor size. That's actually not as bad. Isn't it like they advertised like some really stupid high megapixel count? What was it? Yeah, there it is. 200 megapixel camera. 108 still. Like horrifying. Force shift to cool the sensor to reduce noise. Is that really why that noise would happen? I don't think it does. Like, some of these guys are getting just really... They're just becoming big. They're becoming thick.
Automatically. Phones are still processing like we're not capturing enough light. And yes, these bigger sensors are still much smaller than traditional large camera sensors, but they're so close to the point where these RAWs look barely different than a photo that I'm taking with a dedicated DSLR. And look, I get that most people just want to point and shoot and be done with it. Most people don't want to take raw images on their phone and edit them to this really granular degree before they share anything. I totally understand that. I'm just saying that at this point, phones should be able to do this automatically because there's so much more information in these photos. Now, interestingly,
Raw editing? Really? I mean, they can take raw, so, like... Yeah, but also at the same time, like, bumping things up, I guess, is to style, so...
Apple did announce something
I
with
don't
the
know.
iPhone 13 this year that I don't think necessarily got enough press, and they're calling it photographic styles. Now, on the surface, this does just sort of look like a filter that you'd put over, like, an Instagram story to make it look a little bit different.
I always tweak things
This
anyway. But,
is much different. You're actually changing the way that the photo is processed at the point of capture. It's not just a filter that's laying on top. Now, photographic styles only gives you a couple of tweaks to choose from right now. There's contrast and warmth, which basically means you can make the photo less contrasty or more contrasty,
Later,
or
Lunar.
warmer
Bye.
or cooler. But there are a few presets that you can choose from, and you set them up the first time that you open the camera app, which means every single time that you take a photo, if you've got it on that preset or on that individual fine-tuned one that you made yourself, every photo that you take is going to be processed like that. That is a super simple way to get a more individualized, more modern processed photo without having to edit the RAW yourself, even though they do allow you to edit RAWs if you want to. Also, kind of ironically, the rich contrast photographic style has sort of been the most popular one since the iPhone 13 came out, which really gives a look very similar to what the original Pixel 1 did when it was first released. It gives this really nice chiaroscuro throughout the image. And look, iPhone 13 photos are not perfect either. They're still processing a lot of their photos as if those sensors are smaller sensors like they were on the iPhone 12. But still, at least those photographic styles give you a little bit of an example of what's possible with these bigger sensors, giving a lot more dynamic range and a lot more tonal granularity to when you want to tweak the photo yourself. And even then, I still love using a dedicated camera, even if it's only changing the way that I feel when I'm taking a photo. It just inspires me in a completely different way. But we are getting so close to the point where what these phone cameras can do is becoming almost on par with dedicated DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. And I think that is really exciting. Anyways, if you stuck around that long, thank you. I know this was kind of a longer video, but the original version of this script was like twice as long because I had this detailed explanation of how cameras work at a very fundamental level. Thinking about making that a separate video, so if that's something that you want to see, you can let me know. Also, thank you to the Nerd Writer. He inspired me in a lot of ways to make this video. He has some really amazing videos on Caravaggio and Da Vinci. That you
Oh my
can
God,
check
Nerd
out.
Writer. I
So
remember
I'll
that
add those in
channel.
the description
I don't know
below.
why I stopped watching.
And I'll make another video at some point when I figure out what I want to say, but I'm trying not to rush these. They're just, whenever things come to my mind that I really want to talk about, I'm going to put videos out. But otherwise, it's not really a major thing. I've got a full-time job, all that kind of stuff. So sorry if the content isn't super consistent. That's just how it's going to be. So
I stopped
Alright,
because
guys,
he posted something
I'll
super
catch you,
wrong about SNES audio.
I've got something to say.
Yeah, I think that's probably why. Aside from his program. We finally got it. We finally gotten to it. The first bit of forbidden information. Plasma piano. Making a plasma piano. Are you guys ready for some very loud noises?
This video is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's do some more testing on one circuit before we add more. Last month I ruined all the strings on my piano, so I had to figure out how to make it work without strings. That's when I discovered that if you have high enough voltage, you can shoot a stream of electricity from point A to B. If we then chop it up so it matches the frequency of a piano note, what do we get? A f***ing high electricity bill, but also a piano that creates music through shooting plasma arcs or beams or whatever it's called. I didn't know where to start, so I bought these tasers from Wish.
I bought.
Oh my god.
I love how this video did start. Tesla coil, yeah, but it's a Tesla coil vibrating in a very specific frequency to make funny noises. Also, I love how this video, I forgot this one, started off with the phrase, so I bought a Tesla coil off so I bought a stun gun from AliExpress.
They proved to me that this idea wasn't unachievable.
Oh, what happened?
But there was one big issue. Did we break it again?
Oh, what?
See, the thing is that those things, they are some cheap garbage, right? The voltage is so high, it may arc internally inside the transformer and it burns the transformer.
I needed a more reliable option, and that option is apparently inside old TVs.
No! I buy all my dangerous equipment Chinese.
What?
Oh, here we go!
Radiation. This TV is taking its job way too seriously. Got it out. Damn. Since I only had one video worth of electronics experience, I got backup from the mechatronic engineer Guran.
Yellow, not orange. Do not.
Oh shit. This old TV transformer are capable of turning my silly 24 volts into hundreds of thousands.
Surprising
At
hit the
least
bang
it
from
was supposed to.
Yeah.
I went back to Franzoli Electronics videos to see
Kinda
why my
scared.
circuit didn't work as well as his, even if I had copied his circuit straight off. And that's when I realized that maybe his transformer is just built different. So I bought 10 of his model instead.
Oh my god. Can't check if my insulation. Are you?
What the fuck?
What? Yeah, that's it for today.
Now this is where the weird shit happens.
Take the electric blast and chop it up in the same frequency as different notes. That's not music. Why? Okay, we removed the resistor. We are kind of grasping.
You should get a
for
dance emote? I
ideas,
should.
I guess. Frick yes.
It made a note.
I think it plays
Yo!
pumpkin music. The scale.
I realized that, yeah, this is not sounding very good, which is a downside if you're making a piano.
I think I know what the issue is. Okay, so a singer doesn't just sound like ah, they sound more like ah. So this is the code. Let's try it. We might have to work on that a bit more.
And now when we had blessed it with the voice of an angel, it was time to figure out
It's
how
making
to make
noises.
it understand what key we are pressing on the piano. And wow, shout out to QRS Music who trusted me with this $1,700 optical sensor strip.
Piano sensor doesn't fit in my piano.
So he needs alternating
There's no
current.
other way.
Yeah. No!
I realized that I put this thing on wrong a third time, so I have to redo it again. This is no IKEA manual.
Also, optical sensor, kinda cool.
Key information. So now the piano is connected to the circuit. Ooh. I mean, it doesn't work well, but it finally kind of works.
It works
I
though.
managed to scale that to 88 keys. This is going to be the coolest piano ever.
In order to scale the project, I had to get 10 of these circuits custom made from China, since me making this by hand would take me a lifetime. But when they finally arrived after 1 month, I was in for a nasty surprise. They all burned up as soon as I turned them on.
Oh, what?
Apparently one
Ah,
component
magic
was
smoke.
incorrectly labeled on its data sheet. If I wanted PCBs that didn't work, I could have just made them myself. And they used
This
some
sounds just as
Chinese
bad as
shad
making up one.
solder, which
I mean, maybe.
couldn't remove without burning up the components. Eventually, I managed to get one to work. But the issues didn't end here. I realized that the circuit only worked for 10 seconds before an essential component just burned up all the time.
Oh wow, it's already cooked.
And I wanted my piano to work for at least a few
Rip
minutes.
MOSFET.
So I made a huge heatsink.
It's so big, we could stop global warming. But let's prioritize. Oh, yeah, something died. That was the backup plan. I bought an oscilloscope for $600. And I regret it. It's good to find issues.
The
and we
money's
have a lot of
going
issues,
away.
that's for sure. Whoa, what's that?
But when I actually tried to break it for science, I couldn't. And that's when I discovered
It's the fan. That's amazing. I am so impressed how effective a fan is.
Active
to
cooling
cool
is
down
important,
things.
everybody.
I just got the order of version 2 of
It did the
PCBs.
music.
the new version was unbreakable. But now when it works for more than 10 seconds, I have plenty of time to discover more critical issues.
We're going to test 2 pitches at once, so let's see how that goes. It doesn't seem to fail.
It's close.
Oh my god!
After only adding one more electric shooting thing, things started lagging and freezing. And I think it was because the insane high voltage was shooting weird invisible stuff like everywhere in the room. Just check what it
Dang.
does to my monitor. But I'm accepting when it comes to being an epic gamer.
That's
When I
actually
couldn't see the
terrifying.
signals on my circuit, I had to do something. So I started my tinfoil hat journey to try to
Literally
stop it.
causing
I did a lot of testing of
electric
pretty much every
interference with
interference
itself.
ritual in the book.
So this thing that you always see on cables, it's there to remove interference. So I'm going to remove this.
And I eventually managed to improve things.
You can
It
buy
seemed
those,
like, to
dude.
some extent, the issue might be something that I will have to live with.
You have to use, like, copper shielding
a
across the
little
room?
lag every
Yeah.
other minute Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Oh, wow.
Foreshadowing is a narrative
This is
tool.
really dangerous if he can jump that far. Whoa!
Man,
Whoa, no, 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 no.
it's going the wrong way.
Just 5 circuits at once.
We are ready for the biggest test to date. This is only half of what we need to put inside the piano. So
The
loud.
scariest MIDI ever.
Insanely loud. Let's go! I can't believe
But it
I haven't
works.
tested anything on the piano yet. That's actually really dumb. We know it jumps this far. Whoa, whoa, what? Oh, it's going between the hammers. Okay, it's... Wow. Wait, am I X-raying myself?
Is the piano grounded?
Oh, shit.
I love that one. It's just like,
Almost lit my house
I was
on
just like,
fire.
fire.
But mental health struggles can be just as overwhelming and scary. And that's why this video is sponsored by BetterHelp.
Wild ass transition. I respect the hustle. Is BetterHelp one of the gooder ones or no? Should I skip this? Does anyone know? Anyone? I'm concerned.
With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 25,000 licensed
I'll just
and
leave it
experienced
because it
therapists
sounds
who can
fine.
help you with a wide range of issues. There's been quite a few times where my mental health has been suffering, but at the same time, I'm willing to go great lengths to avoid talking to people. That's why I like
God,
that BetterHelp
same.
has a live chat. You can literally start live chatting with your therapist, and once you've done your terrible icebreakers over chat, you can then phone or video call them. At another point, it really lowers the friction, and it's so much more likely that you will actually talk to someone. And usually, finding a good therapist that works for you, like the traditional in-office way, that's like a part-time job by itself, not to mention more expensive. With BetterHelp, you get the same quality, you get better flexibility, and they custom pick a therapist for you. If they still miss for some reason, you can switch to a new one for no additional charge. So get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Mattias, or use the link in the description, or the QR code. So we actually don't even need the strings anymore. So we're going to donate
Custom.
them to heaven.
Great things you can do to a piano. Just,
Piano makers probably thought, well,
I hate this.
we can never have too many screws. There's no one who's going to pick this apart anyway. For piano, how do you feel? Oh. 2D piano, frick yeah. I can't believe I got it back together again. Wow. The deeper this project
piano.
goes, the more I realize this will be such a disaster. Okay, let's start this power grid. First button. Ah, this looks nice. No electrocute. Damn! Oh, wow, it's like a tornado in
So
here.
I literally almost fried my brain here because I wanted one more blue LED to turn on, but I had completely forgotten that I had already connected the 100,000 volt transformers at head height.
Output. Oh shit. Ah!
Bad
I didn't
idea.
think I connect. I really... The tornado was
Do not
too
do things at
distracting.
home.
Okay,
Don't do this.
this is it. I don't hope in that way. Ah! No, that's not it. Whoa. Okay, that's really good actually. Oh. I don't want to be close to that.
That one did weird
4 seconds
ionizing
on.
thing.
None of them work so far. There was a parenthesis missing in the code. Okay, I'm ready.
Don't you love it when there's a parentheses missing in your code? Why is he running it through a single power strip? I don't know.
I'm alive if I for some reason touch this. That's why I'm scared.
It sounds like it's working.
Oh, did I feel something? I don't know. I don't know if I felt. I'm probably imagining again. So right now we have one circuit working. So this key works. This. That kind of works well, to be honest. I did not expect switching to hammers to even work. See the arcing between the hammers.
Oh God.
I don't know. I I'm probably imagining.
They're
It
still
feels
arcing
like
between each other.
sticking on my body sometimes. Okay, let's do some more testing on one circuit before we add more.
The tension kills me though.
Okay, I can't breathe. I think I unalived for mentally. Why did that happen? Why? It's kind of unpredictable now. I don't know if it was ever predictable.
The camera just went ape. Yeah, the camera went ape there
I don't
too.
want to do this anymore. This is
There's so much voltage going on.
You see what it did? I don't even know what it did. Oh, the Arduino lagged. I understand what happened. The Arduino froze, and when the Arduino freezes, it just continuously outputs a tone. I had released the key, so the hammer went back, but it still wanted to output a tone. As soon as it lags, it's going to do that. I can't do this. Sorry, guys.
Ape.
I will do it. I'm an engineer.
I can't do this. I will do this.
Ah!
There it
That's
goes.
it for today. I can't do this. It's time to do a lot more circuits. Let's play to
Harmony.
Damn it! Both of them output through the same hammer. Oh no! God! Oh shit! I hate.
It's like a Frankenstein monster that doesn't want to be alive right now.
That's the most intense lag I ever seen.
It's so scary, especially when it goes through like, you know, a route that it's not supposed to. The next big noise.
It smells so much ozone here. Okay, I will regret doing this.
Smells like ozone.
Yep,
Ah.
doing that.
I feel like
Seems
Frankenstein
we
doesn't
burned
even
up
alive right
the
now.
most important circuit, so it took me 3 days to get this to work again. So yeah, that was a really bad idea. I almost forgot how terrifying it was.
Play
Do you think it's,
Megalovania.
beautiful
Play
piece of
Megalovania.
Ow! Ow! What? How did I get
This-
shot? I got it through my.
This should be what make. This should be the next like finding Five Nights at Freddy's music. It should just be made from this piano.
It's kind of singing. I think we should be able to control the loudness with how we move the hammer.
That's cool. Yeah, a little bit.
That's pretty cool. I don't know how to use that information though. Let's try chord. We just added some delay to the code to see if
Spicy,
things works
though.
better. So let's try. Please work. Wow! Oh my god! It does work better. You see how when I press a chord, all of them goes through the same hammer. And that's what we're going to try to prevent somehow. He jumps from another place now.
You basically need to isolate every 2 hammers.
It's just jumping between the hammers instead of using the wires.
It's jumping.
But this is going to prevent that. Unfortunately, I built it the wrong way. We can't really see anything. Oh my god!
Now they're
it
isolating.
works. The sound is way better for some reason. I don't know why. That's insane. Do you see anything? My engineering wasn't precise enough, so you see the keys get stuck. Don't lag. Ah! No, 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 no. So I taped every other hammer. Just burns
Is tape?
the tape. The hammers can't get stuck to
Oi.
the acrylic sheets if it's a part of it. Whoa, whoa, that was my only good idea left. Oh, F you. I don't know. what
The
to do.
screeching noise
It's
scares
leaving
me
its
so
own
much.
life. We need a new plan. Ah. Okay, now I'm just throwing everything I have on the piano. We have the acrylic sheets between the hammers. We have a ton of rubber between the cables. And also I used all the electrical tape I have. I consider the project fail if this doesn't work. It kind of works. It doesn't make good sounds in the
It
back
works.
of the piano, but this is such a disaster still though.
It sounds like a
And then
beautiful
you sing the
trash
drums
fire.
afterwards. It's perfect. Insane. Oh shit, that's not good sound. Don't have any lights. Ah, shush. We need to do something about this. You hear that sound when I pull it back? It's when we break the arc, we get all this noise. So QRS, who sent me the optical sensor strip, they gave me special access, so I've been able to make it turn off at the earlier stage of when you release the key. So now it should work a lot better.
So that's
I hope.
cool.
Oh, did we get rid of the issue?
Hey.
Yeah, you see? It turns off before there's any problems. Damn, it works so good. Whoa. It works really
It sounds
good.
like the best, worst cell phone ringtone. Derp.
Stop lagging. Ah!
It's so nice. My
I know
ears
what
hurt.
it sounds like. I've been thinking this sounds like something else. Okay, listen to this. When you press a key on a piano, the volume is super high and then it goes down quickly. But since this one, it starts low in volume and right before you release the key, it goes up a lot. So it sounds like we are reversing someone playing piano.
Oh, I kind of hear what he's talking about. Oh, that's... It does sound kind of backwards. Oh, that sounds funky. Oh, it's cool, though.
Way!
There it is.
Whoa. It doesn't smoke from the steak, it's my insulation.
It's like an accordion from hell. So an accordion.
Words, but let's sear this steak in a G major. No, actually, this is
New
kinda sad,
sentence.
to be honest. It's time to become a
Brand new
part of
sentence.
my creation.
This part was the dumbest part about the video, and he was dealing with hundreds of thousands of volts of could kill you electricity.
Probably created some toxic chemical or something that did not taste.
This was the worst idea, and we watched a video about a man making a piano using Tesla
Now I will have
coils.
some of that energy to answer 1,000 of your comments on this video. Let me know your best guitar ideas. And thanks to Goran and Discord for helping me make this thing. And join the Discord if you want.
This is how he becomes Spider-Man? No, this is how he becomes Electro.
Help me make a piano the
Not
electrical way.
Spider-Man.
Click here. Click, click, click. It's really fun.
That's the, unfortunately, that's the one of the few danger videos that we can pull. But also, hey, look at that. Styropyre made another video. He's not dead. We're going to make a new link. Might as well just make a new one. We'll watch it. This is my Storm or Sorcerer's Origin. Actually, you know what? We might as well just watch the Styropyre video. He's already, he came up in the recommendations. We might as well. And I was going to post it anyway. So, we're getting 2 forbidden knowledge videos today.
Electricity is dangerous.
Also, yeah, seizure warning. It involves electricity. I'm not sure what you were expecting.
But what is it that makes some sources lethal and others not? One way to find out.
I love the look on his face. It's so spicy.
But seriously, this is an important question.
Oh, man.
It's one that gets more wrong answers than right ones. Now, there are a few reasons why I'm making this video. For one, I want to clear up some common misconceptions about electricity, and I want to do it with some not-so-safe demos. But the main reason is somebody called me wrong on the internet.
Is it the volts or amps that kill?
A while ago, I made a short video on the topic, and in summary, I said that you can't pin all electrical hazards on a short answer like volts or amps. And boy, this made a lot of people mad.
What
All
was-
these people
There was one comment that said you sound and look like a lesbian.
their professional qualifications telling me that I'm wrong. Well, I say, no, you. If I'm wrong about something, I do want to be corrected. But one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody flaunts their fancy qualifications while also giving out incorrect information. Now, I'll be honest. I'm not an electrician or an engineer, but I do have a bunch of terrifying electrical devices, as well as the fancy equipment needed to put some numbers behind my claims. Most importantly is that I'm willing to do some crazy stuff to prove a point. And in fact, I'm willing to put myself into circuits that should be lethal by their logic.
Don't.
Let's get started. Oh yeah, before I go on, I should warn you that all
Please
the
don't.
crazy stuff you're about to see was done completely for educational purposes. And in fact, if you were to try any of this stuff at home, you'd probably die. So yeah, please don't.
Don't do this. You hear me?
Electricity is one of mankind's
Don't do
greatest
this.
achievements. Using electricity, we can light our homes, cook our food, and use these nightmare bricks to watch horrors happen in real time.
Oh, radical
Electricity
horrors
isn't
and
all
nightmare bricks.
sunshine and roses, though. It can shock you, it can burn you, it can even kill you. But what is it exactly about electricity that makes it dangerous? Well, this is a complicated question, and the answer depends highly on the source of that electricity. First, let's consider our biggest design vulnerability when it comes to electricity, and that's the nervous system. Nerve cells work on electrical signals that are a small fraction of a single volt, so it really doesn't take much to override these with outside memes. I mean, anybody
Memes.
who's licked a 9-volt battery knows how easily a mere 9 volts overpowers all the signals going to your tongue. Oh. Now, if there's
9
any
volts taste
electrical system in
spicy.
your body that you don't want to mess with, it's in the heart. The heart has its own set of pacemaker cells that work separately from the brain. And like other nerve cells in the body, they deal with voltages of less than 1/10 of a single volt. It doesn't take much of a shock to mortally interfere with the signals that set the heart rhythm, and this is why most electrical fatalities are cardiac related. Even if the heart does manage to get spared by a shock, electricity
Spicy.
can still cause burns, nerve damage, flash blindness, and plenty of other not-so-fun experiences.
Tasty.
Our puny bodies are simply no match for angry electrons. Now that we've looked at our design vulnerabilities, let's start playing with some fun electrical sources. to see if it's the volts or amps that play a bigger role. Going off of my previous comments, it seems that most people with professional experience said it's just the current that kills. It turns out there are some problems with that. Here I've hooked up a car battery up to these steel rods. Now this battery can dump up to 1,000 amps, yet touching these bare rods doesn't do anything to me. Oh, you think the battery's dead? Nope. The thing is, that battery can dump 1,000
Still
amps,
scares me.
but not through me. It's only a 12-volt source after all, and my skin's resistance is high enough to block all but a minuscule amount of current from going through my body.
He's not grounded.
This is
Yeah.
Ohm's law in action. You can't always use this logic when judging the hazard of an electrical source, but it does work for low voltages like this. Here I have a different flavor of high current power supply. It's a step-down transformer I wound years ago.
Why is it in an ice cream box?
And it's held up surprisingly well in this ice cream bucket.
Okay.
Being a transformer, it's AC, unlike the battery. But the voltage
Okay.
is still way too low to shock me. Check out the current when I drop a quarter across it. That's over 1,000 amps. Of course, just because these low voltage, high current sources can't shock, it doesn't mean they're completely safe. They can still burn you by simply heating things up. It's also possible to get shocked indirectly, like by rapidly disconnecting them from an inductive load like this electromagnet, because you get a big voltage spike by doing this.
Ooh.
So this all makes it seem like it's the volts that matter here, right? Let's take a look at this electrical shock hazard chart. There's actually nothing
Chart.
about voltage on here at all, only current. What gives? This assumes that that source can put that current through you, which means it has to have a sufficiently high voltage to do so, as well as a low enough impedance. But what kind of voltages are we talking about here? According to the chart, less than 100 milliamps of current can be lethal. My body's resistance is about 250,000 ohms, so according to Ohm's law, I'd need a voltage of about 25,000 volts to kill me.
There we go.
Seems simple enough, right? Let's go ahead and put that idea to practice. Let me use this apple as a model of the human body. It has an even higher resistance than me, about 10 million ohms. In order to put a lethal current of 100 milliamps through it, Ohm's law says I need 1,000,000 volts. Why don't we test that out?
Hello,
Watch the
Apple.
voltage here and the current here. A couple notes about the setup. I'm using a voltage divider so I don't kill my meter, which means the actual voltage is 10 times higher than what the meter shows. As for the current, I'm measuring the voltage drop across a 1 ohm resistor, which means the voltage measured is the current going through it in amps. Alright, let's slowly crank up the voltage there. Oh, it's conducting. Ha, look at that. The apple's dead.
There goes, yep.
Ohm's law said I'd need 1,000,000 volts.
Goodbye.
Yet it was passing 100 milliamps at barely over 1,000 volts. What gives? It turns out you can throw Ohm's law out the window in situations like this, because the apple experienced something called dielectric breakdown.
Bye, Apple.
When the voltage across an insulator reaches a high enough point, the molecules in it get shredded by the electric field. This means the insulator suddenly becomes a conductor and will allow a huge amount of current to pass through it. Ohm's law does not tell you when this happens. For human skin, this point is roughly about...
Also, I just want to say, this is an amazing screen picture out of context. Look at that. BRB, I gotta charge my pickle. Like, amazing.
500 volts or so, but this varies considerably.
Oh yeah, not to mention he just plugged the pickle into mains, so...
Take nearly as much voltage to be a problem. Of interesting note is that the electric chair only has a voltage of about 2,000 volts. Based on Ohm's law,
is that a trans girl euphemism? No, look at it.
It's lethal, but this logic doesn't
look
work
at
because the skin can't hold off that kind of voltage. It's funny because Ohm's law is hardly a law in the physical sense because it fails all the time. Many simple devices violate ohmic behavior. LEDs, many light bulbs, even the full bridge rectifier do not obey Ohm's law. If you want to play it safe, stick with voltages under 50 volts, because that's the limit where OSHA says the voltage is not high enough to electrocute.
Cool.
There's another issue relying on resistance when you're dealing with AC.
No.
If you've ever been shocked by a live wire without touching ground at the same time, you've experienced this. What's completing the circuit here? A capacitor, of course. Notice how the resistance of this capacitor is so high that it can't be measured by my meter, yet it still can pass a bunch of current. That's because AC can pass through a capacitor. You have a capacitance too, which is why you can feel a shock from touching a single live wire. At this point in the video, I know there will still be people out there that argue it's just the current that kills, because that's what's shown in those graphs, right? Or maybe they'll concede to the idea that voltage does play a role, but still current in the end doing the damage. Well, this is the point where I start putting myself into circuits that should be lethal under that premise. Even this very chart acknowledges it's more than just the current that kills. There's a whole axis in time, and the chart is only valid for a small range of
10
frequencies
seconds.
as well.
Huh.
So, let's switch it up a bit using something else we experience. Static electricity.
Cat.
Anytime you receive a static shock, the voltage you're being exposed to is quite high, much higher than what you get out of an outlet. In fact, going off the distance the arc can jump in open air, this voltage is several thousand volts. Most people will tell you the reason it doesn't kill you is because it's low current, but let's put that to the test. Right here I have a Van de Graaff generator.
Van de Graaff.
It's capable of generating very high DC voltages, similar to what you get from a static shock, just on steroids. This is a mechanical device that uses a rubber belt to transfer charge to the spherical top load. The voltages generated here are enormous, over 100,000 volts.
Van de
Although
Graaff
the
generators are
voltages
cool.
huge, the charge
I
that accumulates in the
remember
sphere
I remember
is still
seeing
pretty
these in
tiny,
like the science
only a
museum.
couple millionths of a coulomb. Even so, this minuscule amount of charge is able to produce a force that overcomes the gravitational pull of the entire planet. The charges are small, but what about the currents? I mean, they must be small if I can touch them without dying, right? Ow!
Oh, that's smart. Oh.
Let's go
Oh, that
ahead
looked
and
painful.
test that out. Once again, I'll be measuring current via a 1 ohm resistor, but this time with an extra fancy resistor that I built based on a video by Vitaly. It minimizes inductance to get an accurate reading. I should note that I've referenced Vitaly's videos more than anyone else on my channel.
It looks like
You
a
should definitely
satellite.
check him out for some cool high voltage experiments. Alright, let's measure the current of that pulse.
Touch.
Look at that, that was 40 amps.
Oh.
Considering the voltage here was on the order of 100,000 volts, the electrical power there was over 1,000,000 watts. The idea that static shocks are low current is a myth. When you get shocked by static, you're eating amps of current. Ow!
He needs to stop doing that.
So,
It's such
why
a
don't you
bad
go to heaven
idea.
when you get a static shock? Because you've been naughty. But seriously, if you look at the DC shock hazard chart, you'll see that currents of a fraction of an amp can be lethal. What gives? Well, the chart clearly suggests there is a strong time dependence here. The shorter the duration of the shock, the more current your body can handle, which makes sense, really. Current alone doesn't tell you how much charge is transferred or for how long it happens. Current is just a rate of charge transfer after all. It's just like how your speed on a highway doesn't tell you how far you've gone or for how long you've traveled. When it comes to a static shock, those huge currents are happening for an extremely short duration, on the order of a microsecond. This simply isn't enough time to cause significant damage to a person. So no, it's not just the current that kills, and these 40 amp static shocks are proof of that. Ow! I know that even this isn't going to be enough for some people. A microsecond pulse? That's cheating. Well, if I'm going to go through the trouble of making this video, I might as well murder the idea that it's just the current that kills. So I'm going to do something clinically insane to prove my point. So I've built this Tesla coil here.
Oh boy.
This is not an ordinary Tesla coil. It's switched with a monster
Oh.
Soviet vacuum tube. And with a power draw of 15 kilowatts, it's
Man.
one of the most powerful vacuum tube driven coils in existence.
This vacuum
It's a
tube still
beautiful
terrifies
combination
me.
of raw power and vacuum tube technology gives it some unique properties. Nowadays, most Tesla coils are switched with solid-state circuits. These are more efficient, and their typically pulsed operation allows them to make longer arcs for a given power draw than a vacuum tube coil. My giant tube-driven coil doesn't stand out in raw arc length, as the longest arc it'll make is only about 2 meters or so. Where it does
Only 2
shine is
meters.
its ability to make a white-hot arc to a grounded object. It straight up looks and sounds like a substation fault when it's running. It also melts the steel screwdrivers I use as breakout electrodes. It truly is a terrifying sight to behold. I know what you're thinking. It must be hard to resist touching something that looks as crazy as that, right?
I don't want to touch it.
Well, I have given in to the temptation.
I don't wanna
And
touch
no,
it.
I'm not very sane for doing this.
Uh,
I do use a steel file to distance myself from that white-hot arc. But of course, I'm still conducting pretty much the full current there.
he's touching it.
Besides, it doesn't stop the arc from jumping directly to me occasionally. So why doesn't it kill me? Most people will tell you it's because Tesla coils operate with gigantic voltages but very little current. It's funny, because when it comes to electricity, there's no bigger mythological beast than the Tesla coil. All aspects of Tesla coils are filled with misconceptions in the public eye.
Death.
Their operation, their history, their hazards, they're all littered with myths. Now to be fair, they are mysterious devices, and although their construction can be simple, the details of how they operate can get quite
I hate that it's green.
Let's try and put some numbers behind
Ugh.
this coil. Is the current really that low? What's the output voltage like? Let's start with current. I've wound this current transformer with as many wire turns as there are ohms of resistance across it. That way, its voltage readout is identical to the current in amps of a wire going through the middle.
Math.
Feeding the
Okay.
grounded wire of my secondary coil through this will give the current output of my Tesla coil. Well, here we go. Alright, it triggered. Look at that. That's 3.2 amps of current. That's not low current at all. In fact, that's actually terrifying.
How the fuck did he get a
To doubt
vacuum
my
tube this
measurements,
powerless?
let's try that again
I
with
think
the
he got it from
second
eBay.
RF ammeter. This nearly
Like, I'm pretty sure he got it
100
from,
meter
like,
is quite
eBay.
simple. It's just based on a thermocouple,
Wow.
which actually means it'll measure lower frequency and even DC current just fine too.
Wow.
Let's run it hooked up to the Tesla coil. Alright, here we go.
Wow.
Well, there's an amp at least. Now I don't want to kill the meter, so I'm probably just going to stop it here. I ended up buying an even bigger meter, so let's give this one a go. Alright, here we go.
Ripped it from a boutique base amp. I don't know. Like, I'm pretty sure he straight up got it off eBay.
Okay, I'm at full power
Or military
now.
surplus
It's
store,
reading
one of
only a
those
little
things.
over
You
an
could
amp.
get some weird stuff
Now
on
I
eBay.
measured 3.2 amps earlier, which is the correct measurement here. Actually, they're both right. This old meter reads the RMS current, and I looked at the peak current using my current transformer. Since the output is a sine wave at 50% duty cycle, that means that these measurements line up pretty much perfectly. Pretty cool, right? Alright, so the current
Duty
is actually
cycle.
quite high. But what about the voltage? Let's try to measure the output voltage with this vacuum capacitor voltage divider. Here we go. Huh, I'm only at a couple percent of max power here and it's already at 50,000 volts. Now I don't want to cook myself with x-rays, so I'm not going to push it.
That's a lot.
I can still estimate the voltage at max power if I make the admittedly rough approximation that the coil is purely inductive.
Why did he write this on
This
an
gives a
apple?
result of about 100,000 volts, which is about what I expect, really. The arc itself clamps the voltage.
You could see the other
pretty
apple he threw down there,
so
too.
that's why the voltage doesn't rise that much with considerably higher
I was hoping that one hit the lake.
Hold up. 100,000 volts at 3 amps? Does that make sense? That's like 300,000 watts. That's 20 times more power than I'm giving it. Yes, it actually checks out. But the kicker is that that power is nearly all reactive. Tesla coils are resonators after all, sloshing charge back and forth and rigging up huge voltages at significant current. You still can extract more energy than you put into them, however, since the current and voltage are nearly completely out of phase. Even so, the real power output is still significant, and that arc there is still burning many thousands of real watts. So back to the original question, why doesn't it kill me when I touch it? The current is not low, and although that power is mostly reactive, I'm still conducting amps of current for a substantial amount of time when I do this. What's going on here? Many Tesla coil builders will tell you it's the skin effect at play here. At high frequencies, currents in a conductor are magnetically pushed to the edges, and this effect is a critical consideration when it comes to designing a Tesla coil. In fact, the currents in this thick cable are almost completely restricted to the outer 200 microns because of this. So, does this mean the current just travels along my skin when I touch it? Nope. The skin effect is only significant at these frequencies when dealing with a good conductor like copper. When the material is resistive like flesh, that goes out the window.
He really
You can
liked
see
this
by
joke.
cooking food in the microwave. The frequency there is over 10,000 times higher than my Tesla coil, yet it can still warm food quite a bit below the surface. So no, it's not the skin effect either. So what is it then? Well, it turns out, our nerves aren't quite so susceptible to high frequencies. And somewhere beyond 10 kilohertz, the polarity flips too fast to depolarize a nerve cell membrane. This means your nerves pretty much don't register it, and that's why it doesn't electrocute. Electroboom actually mapped out his own response to different electrical frequencies, and published this chart with his results.
I don't know why he did
Of
this.
course,
Like, oh my god.
just because it doesn't kill instantly does not make it safe. Touching a Tesla coil output is never really safe.
No,
You
of
can get
course.
severe internal
No.
burns when conducting big RF currents. I don't make a habit of touching arcs, and I keep my contacts brief. I should point out that the power supply driving the coil is absolutely lethal, and touching that would kill you before you hit the floor. The funny thing is that the Tesla coil steps up the voltage and current of the supply, while also making it less lethal due to the higher frequency. High frequency is also part of what keeps you from getting zapped by touching a plasma globe. The
Plasma
voltage on the
globes.
outside is actually quite significant, but a combination
Oh,
of the high
wow.
frequency output, as well as the fact that it's a high impedance source, prevents you from getting zapped. Now, of course, high frequency won't protect you from something driven by a lethal high voltage source lacking isolation. My demon circuit is a classic example of this. The
My
flame arc
demon
there is
circuit.
running at over 13 megahertz, yet touching it would still kill you via the DC supply running it, since there's no isolation there. So what is it that makes exposure to some electrical sources lethal and others not? Well, it's a combination of volts, and amps, and frequency, and duration, as well as some other stuff that determine whether it's dangerous or not. And, for the record, that's exactly what I said in my original 40-second video. To elaborate on the other stuff part, the source impedance, as well as where on your body you get shocked, are big players as well. Now, I don't intend this video to be an all-encompassing guide to electrical hazards, but I do hope it clears up some common misconceptions out there. I will say that high-voltage, low-impedance sources are ruthless when it comes to user error. There's a reason why the microwave oven transformer kills more science hobbyists than anything else. There's no room for a mistake. One final thing I'd like to address is all the comments I get from people that are surprised I'm still alive every time I upload. Like, come on. I realize I work with a lot of extremely dangerous stuff, but I really do take considerable precautions, and that's why I'm still uploading. I will say that if it is electricity that ends up taking me out, it's probably not going to be this kind of stuff. It's going to be my favorite power supply of all, clouds. I gotta get out of here.
Oh, boy. I hate that shot the most because you could see where it landed.
Oh, one more thing. I'd like to shout out the YouTuber Tested to Destruction. He's a high-voltage YouTuber that embarked on using the monster GU39B Tetro to build a Tesla coil at the same time I did. We tested a bunch of different designs and shared our results with each other. He's got a lot of crazy high-voltage stuff on his channel, so you should check him out. I'd also like to thank all my patrons on Patreon, especially for supporting me when I was in the middle of a move and unable to make new content. Finally, I'd like to thank all those professionals out there that encouraged me to make this video. Thank you, you silly garloids. Stay safe out there.
At Garloid. It's very good. Okay. We are unfortunately already out of time. I'm sorry. So we gotta end it for today. Mainly because I realized that I need to actually take care of my sleep more, so I should probably do that. Anyway, don't worry though. I will send you over to a lovely VTuber who will take care of you guys very nicely. And not just because she's a mommy GF or whatever. Like I said, we're sending you over to a mommy GF. Make sure you guys save before you go. I will see you guys Tuesday, the weekend. I don't know. It depends on how much sleep I get. Bye-bye.
But